welcome to all our viewers. My name is Miraculin and I'm an occupational therapist working at PlayStreet, Bangalore, India. PlayStreet is an organization that provides educational services to help children with special needs become independent and live up to their potential. We also offer parent empowerment programs and integrated schooling programs and a variety of clinical services. In recognition of Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, our focus is firmly set on the profound significance of dyspraxia. We aim for this series to shed light on the complexities of dyspraxia, address the specific hurdles people with dyspraxia face, and raise awareness about its importance within the neurodiversity movement. Today, we are on the fifth talk of our series under the segment that focuses on the visible effects of dyspraxia. The topic for today is impact of dyspraxia on ADL, that is activities of daily living, play, and ideation. And we are honored to have Dr. Banumathe Karuppiah with us to share her valuable thoughts and information on the same. Dr. Banumathe, M.O.T. and Ph.D., is an associate professor cum pediatric occupational therapy supervisor with over 14 years of experience in the field. Since her area of expertise is in pediatrics, she did her research work on the topic relationship of visual perception, visual motor integration, and handwriting with academic performance in elementary school children, a cohort study, which was also funded by the Department of Science and Technology of the Government of India. She has many scientific publications to her credit, a copyright, and has won awards for her research work in national and international conferences. She is a member of Ph.D. Doctoral Advisory Committee for O2 Scholars and also guides PG students' research work within the realm of pediatric occupational therapy. Dr. Banumathe is a registered OT practitioner in India and UK and also an associate member in Malaysian Association of OT, which gives her a wealth of experience across diverse cultural contexts and occupational therapy practices. Currently, she is the program director for the Department of Occupational Therapy at a prestigious private university in Malaysia, furthering her commitment to education and advancement in occupational therapy practices. I am very much honored to have done my master's under Dr. Banumathe, and she was also my guide for my PG thesis. Banu ma'am, we are very grateful that you have taken time out of your schedule to share your knowledge about dyspraxia and its various impacts on various parts of child's life. Would you like to share any thoughts before we go to the questions, ma'am?
So, first of all, I would like to thank the organization for giving me this opportunity and especially to share my experience on this area, that is the impact of dyspraxia on individuals with autism. I myself proud to be an occupational therapist where I can contribute to children who are suffering with this problem, especially the parents. My advice is please keep in touch with the special services, especially the occupational therapy services, to get the betterment of the child. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we'll get on to the questions. So, ma'am, so as occupational therapists, so we work on various parts of a child's life. Like we work on their ADL, we work on their play, we work on their motor skills and all. So how does dyspraxia influence a person's or a child's ability to generate and plan ideas or plan the movements for ADL and daily activities?
Since from the day morning when we wake up until night before we go to sleep, almost each and every activity that we involves lot of movements. So maybe as a normals, we may not realize since we are just doing everything spontaneously. But when it comes to the special children, the process of planning or execution of the movements is really a challenge, especially in children with autism. So what happened is even the task we might be thinking it's just a brushing task or it's just a feeding. Why can't the child do it? But actually, the problem is in processing the movement which is required for the self-care or maybe the play. You can just see the child is just standing in front of the mirror, just holding the brush, but without knowing what is to be done with this. But actually, it's not that child is not having the skill of doing. Maybe it's a brain processing difficulty where the child doesn't have that planning itself how to proceed with the next step in that. I'm just giving an example of brushing, which is a very common one, but this is applicable even for children while playing. You might be thinking, the parents might be thinking that just giving the play toys, the child is expected to play. But these children will have a problem in their processing itself. So it's a kind of a neurological issues where they cannot process what to do next. So it's like idealess. So actually, across the self care or across the play activities, where every task requires a lot of planning and execution, children with dyspraxia, where they will have a difficulty in planning and executing the movements. So throughout their activity is going to have an impact.
Okay, ma'am. And also, ma'am, so now that you told that, how ideation is a problem and they're not able to process and do activities, how do you think ideation affects imitation and execution? So for both for simple and complex activities. So does ideation play a major role in imitation also? How does that work?
Um, Actually, if you see these children, they might be good with imitation because the visual cues that they get out of the movement, they may able to just repeat what they observe if it is a simple task. Again, if it is a complex task, it's going to be a challenge for them because multiple steps which the child has to take in through the visual cues, but still the brain has to process it. So the complex task might be still the challenging for these kids. Maybe if you just take the brush, I'm just taking an example again, the brushing, since we all know the common task of brushing. So if we take the brush or just taking the brush, the child may able to imitate it. But if you do the consecutive of all the steps involved in that particular brushing, the child may just stuck in between. Not necessarily the child will perform throughout the task. So to some extent that imitation can help in developing the skills, but majorly if it is a complex task, it's going to be a challenge for the child.
Okay, ma'am. So, for overcoming this challenge, do you think working on ideation will help in maybe easily overcoming the challenges? So these problems in imitation and in especially with complex activities, do you think as professionals working on the ideation will help improve their imitation or their process for complex activities?
Definitely, as a therapist, we need to help them in overcoming this challenge because what happens because they are not able to meet the requirement or the challenge and the failure actually the failure that they occur during the process that may stop them in doing again, so they will not attempt again to do it, and that fear of failure may end up in giving a low self confidence. So a lot of psychological issues may rise because of this. So to overcome this, definitely we have to help as a healthcare professionals.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So now we spoke about ADL and imitation and all. How do you think that dyspraxia affects a child's participation in play? Like, is there separate challenges for a child playing alone and separate challenges for a child who's playing with their peers? So, how does that work, ma'am? How does that impact?
Okay. If you view this dyspraxia as such a problem, though you give lot of toys to the child, not necessarily the child will engage in the toys. Maybe a simple squeeze toy, some light toys that the child may engage. But a little bit constructive play, if you expect, like maybe a building block or puzzles or pretend play using maybe trying to pretend like a kitchen chef or something. So those things might be a challenge because even if the toys are there in front of the child, the child may not know like exactly how to use it and engage in that play. So the engagement part is really a concern in that case. And when it comes to the peers, what happens is like since the child is not involved in the play activity, that will try to isolate the child from the peer interaction. So as I said previously, also the fear of failure. Similarly, these children will have a very low confidence about themselves since they are not able to do things correctly. So that may again affect them to participate with other kids.
Okay. So, ma'am, you mentioned before this, you mentioned that, as therapists, we will have to intervene and we have to work on their ideation and all. So, are there any specific interventions or specific strategies that we as therapists or educators or professionals as such could help in building the ideation for children with dyspraxia?
If we say the first step is early diagnosis. I would advise first, this problem needs to be identified at the earliest, which
Mhm.
might be a challenge for the parents, especially to identify the child has this particular issue. Maybe they have to keenly observing the child in all aspects, like from the day morning, like what a child is doing. Every activity needs to be observed,
Mhm.
whether the child is clumsy in doing or not showing any interest. Maybe the external appearance is like the child is not interested towards it. So that kind of a feature that they have to keep looking, and as much as possible, they have to do a differential diagnosis to rule out the other issues. And that early diagnosis, along with that, a simple strategy even the parents can do it at home, like a practice. Just a repeated practice is the best way to teach the child about or to overcome this issue. And next is imitation or visual cues. Maybe a simple imitation is father or the mother can do it along with the child, where the child can just observe the parent doing it and imitate it. And main thing is chunks, like maybe a chaining things, like break down the task into different steps and just start with one step at a time. So these are some of the simple strategies at home that they can incorporate, which will be helpful in overcoming this dyspraxia issues. Or maybe a simple visual input, like the steps involved in that particular task can be picturized, where the child can look at that and always ensure that the feedback, continuous feedback, is what is correct and what is wrong. Only then the child will get the feedback on what is supposed to expect, do or not supposed to do. So that is very important. And always these children will have a less motivation because of fear of failure. So we have to keep giving a reinforcement to improve the child's motivation level to perform it. So these some strategies which the parents can do it at home.
Ma'am, so when we were talking about strategies, you also mentioned about differential diagnosis. So I think like very recently, dyspraxia and autism have started going hand in hand. That we're noticing here also in our clinic. Also, we see a lot of children with autism who also have dyspraxia and motor planning difficulties and such. So, is there any sensory processing issues, like distinctively seen in dyspraxia and autism? If so, ma'am, how do they manifest in daily life, be it ADL or be it play or in their day-to-day activities? How does that manifest?
So whether it is actually a dyspraxia or the autism spectrum disorder, the most common feature that can be shared in any of those diagnoses is sensory processing issues. Because the sensory processing issues, where even here also movement planning, all those things is a process in the brain. So definitely it is going to have an impact on the dyspraxia as well as in the autism. So what happens in case like just an autism, the pure diagnosis, that has their own impact. Over that, the dyspraxia, if it is going to be there, that is going to have an additional impact on their outcome. Again, the severity. So if it is a mild, then the problem might be not that severe. If it is severe, the intensity of the diagnosis really matters in this case. So in dyspraxia or in autism spectrum disorder, definitely they are going to have the sensory processing issues like hypersensitivity or hypersensitivity to the touch or to the any kind of a stimulus that they are going to have. So maybe the diagnosis that what we identify may help in predicting the outcome to what way it might be improved.
So one doubt is that do like having a dyspraxia diagnosis or having an autism diagnosis or even like some children have a diagnosis of both. Uh, do like in these three separate scenarios, do you think sensory issues manifest in different ways?
See, actually, within autism, if you see itself, the sensory processing not necessary to be the similar way for all the autism children. So it manifests in its own unique way.
Hmm.
Like if you take two children with autism, not necessarily the one child who is having a touch hypersensitivity, another child not necessary to have the same touch hypersensitivity. So the underlying features may different from one diagnosis to the another diagnosis, but across these conditions, definitely sensory processing issues will be seen.
Okay. Also, like in continuation to that, in like practical features, uh, do you think a diagnosis with in relation to sensory, I'm asking, a child with just dyspraxia will have minor difficulties in day-to-day activities compared to dyspraxia and autism? How does that
Definitely.
go?
Yes, yes, yes. I'll just give an example here. Maybe dyspraxia children IQ might be almost like they might be having a good IQ compared to the children with autism. So their cognitive strategies may work better than the children with autism. And again, if you compare these two variations, like that social skill wise, these dyspraxic children will have a better skills.
Okay.
So those plus points, the positives, may have a good impact on the outcome of the problem.
Okay, ma'am. So in the same line, how the co-occurrence of autism and dyspraxia. So now you've explained about day-to-day activities. So can you give a little detail about education and social skills? Like how does co-occurrence, having both dyspraxia and autism and having difficulties in ideation affect education and socialization? Because the parents that come to us right now, mainly their main concern is we want them to have friends, we want them to study well, to mingle well in school. So how does that impact, ma'am?
Since we all know that just now we are discussing in that aspect, the dyspraxia children, the challenge itself is with the ideation. So basically, the planning itself is a concern. Then definitely the execution is also going to be a concern. So definitely the education point of view or the social interaction point of view, they are going to have a challenge. But with the adequate training, it might be habituated to them to behave or to do well, or definitely with kind of adaptive strategies, they may able to overcome with the educational aspect.
Okay. So how as teachers or, right now, our children with special needs, they go to normal school with shadow teachers. So how can they help a little bit without the child being completely dependent on them? How can they be helpful, ma'am, in the classroom setting?
Actually, as you said, that shadow teacher, it's a kind of a assistant that we are going to provide. So they are going to be the prompters for them.
Okay.
Since we know that ideation, that planning itself is a concern, we can, the shadow teacher can actually prompt during the task, maybe what is expected to do first, or what is expected to do next, or what is done in on the board, or something like that. The prompt may help in planning the steps, but it can be like gradually weaned once a child is done independently,
Hmm.
or maybe that can be replaced with the kind of nowadays a lot of assistive technologies are
Hmm.
available. Maybe that can be introduced to the child so that the child can be independent in doing things than dependent on the caretakers or the shadow teacher.
Okay, ma'am. Also, ma'am, previously you had mentioned how children with dyspraxia, when given something, a toy or something, they don't know how to play, and it can also be mistaken to be a lack of motivation or laziness, or they just don't want to play. So, how can this misunderstanding, how can this mindset be changed, ma'am?
If you see, the visible issues are the child is not showing any interest. The child is just sitting very lethargic,
Hmm.
clumsy. These are the very common words the parents may come up
Yeah.
with. And actually, this can be identified just by doing the early diagnosis.
Hmm.
Maybe if they are keen in observing the children throughout the day, and especially the parents and the teachers are playing a major role in this, where the early diagnosis by creating awareness to the teachers, school teachers, or creating awareness to the parents as a promotional thing that they have to be having a knowledge on how to identify these things may help in identifying these issues to differentiate basically,
Mm-mm.
or ruling out as maybe they can take a consultation from the professionals like occupational therapist or speech therapist to rule out that the issue is really the lack of interest or is it because of the dyspraxia. Just to avoid the misperception about the concept, so we have to really give a lot of tasks to identify the issues with the dyspraxia or the motivation or the interest.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And also, we spoke about assistive technologies before a little bit when we were talking about caretakers and all. Could you give us some example about what type of assistive technologies or tools that we can use to help a child with motor planning difficulties?
Okay. I'm not so sure like to what extent that assistive technologies are implemented in our country, but
Yeah.
some of the tools that what I am talking is actually is already in practice in the Western countries. But with all the advances in technology, I hope even in our country we can incorporate because some of the things which are already existing even with our normal mobile phones. So a lot of apps, the softwares, the instructional softwares are available, or maybe the different softwares like even a simple Google Calendar to-do list. That itself can help in prompting the person to do, what to do, like that kind of a checklist, that kind of a thing can be used or implemented as a practice. Or nowadays, a artificial intelligence tools are available, so even I have recently seen that the chat GPT itself is used for children with dyspraxia to strengthen, like it's a AI, but this
Hmm.
can be used to overcome the uh, what to say, the weakness or the challenges the child faces through productive use of it. So maybe they have to really get a training out of it to get the proper method of using it, and at policy level, if this is implemented at the educational background, it's well and good. And even audio recorded books are available, and there are softwares where the teaching things can be converted into the recordings, and the child can use it later for repeated hearing, so that the child can get a better input than just one time hearing. So those managed softwares are available. So that will help in improving these problems. Not completely, but at
Yeah.
least it will help in assisting a child to reduce the burden that they are depending on the parents or others.
Correct. Yeah. So now that we spoke about technology and all, now, ma'am, how, as professionals or parents or caretakers or even teachers, educators, how can we as professionals or caregivers come together to help a child with dyspraxia, ma'am? Like, general overall well-being in different areas like, at home at the playground or at school or at the park or at the mall? How could we help them become independent?
Hmm. Okay, fine. If you see this dyspraxia, it's not going to have an impact on one aspect. Across the areas like self-care or play or leisure, like any task, academics, like any aspect the child interact or involved in the daily life, this is going to have an impact. So multiple settings basically. So multiple setting, not only one person is going to deal with the child. Like at home, the child is going to interact with the parents, involved doing with parents. At school, with the teachers. At park, maybe with the friends or the peers. At classroom, again with the peers. So if you see, multiple people are involved in this, and to get the overall well-being of the child in the sense, then everybody around the child needs to be aware about what is this issue, and all should go in the same pathway so that the overall well-being towards the right target can be achieved. The way parents deal with us in some other way, and teachers are dealing with in some other way, that may end up in confusion to the child. Already the child has the planning issue and execution issue. Again, too many inputs in a different way is going to have a negative impact. So to get the positive impact, to streamline it, if we all collaborate and we all know each other what we are going to do with our child, that may help in getting a better outcome. Context specifically, the child will learn in a better way compared to without a collaboration.
So now, as professionals, you explained, ma'am. So as a friend, who does not know much about dyspraxia, maybe this friend is just seeing a child just struggling to do basic things. So how, as friends, they can help their co-worker or a colleague or peer suffering with ideation issue?
See, actually, I feel somewhere that the awareness, like maybe a simple awareness creating to the peers, like just a kind of a buddy system, like help each other. That at the young stage itself, if we build that concept to the kids, that may help in improving for these children also as a overall. So kind of education system itself where we have this buddy system to help each other one-to-one basis. So the children actually who are going to be around the peers can be educated on this aspect in general. Or suppose if we identify that really the child requires a special attention, maybe we can conduct the groups within the school premises, all these people who are all involved with the child, and we can just create a knowledge to them like how to deal with the child, or in what way each of the person can contribute in the well-being of this child. So that may help in improving the peer involvement.
So outside of therapy area also, like, as therapists, I think we can also go create general awareness so that other children are also
Yes.
they know what dyspraxia is and all. Thank you so much, ma'am. This was a very informative session. And on behalf of PlayStreet team, I would like to thank you, ma'am, for taking your time to share your insights and expertise today. Your perspectives have added valuable depth to our understanding of dyspraxia and DCD. To our viewers, we hope you found this interview insightful. And if you have any questions related to this topic, or if you would like to share your thoughts, please feel free to contact with us. At PlayStreet, we also offer a special program called the Dyspraxia Program. It encompasses intensive occupational therapy, speech therapy, physiotherapy, sensory and rhythm-based upbeat music and movement program, and co-regulation. If you feel that your child has dyspraxia, please feel free to contact us for further details regarding the program. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Have a great day. Bye bye.